We're headed into NFL Week 7. There's a couple big storylines that happened earlier this week that I want to discuss as well before we dive into the big game breakdowns. But before we do that, appreciate you guys being patient with me. I did miss last week. I was out of town on my honeymoon, so appreciate those who were supportive of that. But we are back nonetheless. Sorry, I'm a bit late. This show will also be a bit quicker. We are also down beach just due to the logistics, but no worries. Still talking about the games. Nonetheless, we are Statletics. For those of you who do not know us, we really rely on our model projections, and we love to discuss the big games. So what we do is we pick some of the biggest games on the slate for a given week and walk through those games, in particular from a statistical perspective, kind of what we think how the game is going to play out, and what the model has to say about the game. So week 7, we have about 5 matchups that we're going to walk through today. Pretty exciting stuff in the league, happening in the league over the past few weeks. Well, actually, let's talk about them right now. There are 2 trades that happened this week, both at the wide receiver position that I have to make a comment on. We would not be an NFL show if I did not talk about these trades. First of all, Davante Adams going to the Jets. Not much of a surprise, but even though when it went through, it was still kind of a bit of a, not a shock, but it's like something that we've been listening to over the past few weeks. We didn't know if it would ever come to fruition. We thought the talks fizzled out, but nonetheless, it went through. Really quick, brief synopsis on what I think the implications are going to be. The biggest winner is Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, no doubt about it. I think they have immediate on-field chemistry that will make an immediate impact for the New York Jets. A loser, Garrett Wilson, ? But this Jets offense just gets better. So, for the long term, obviously, I don't think it was like anything groundbreaking, but for the short term, it certainly bolsters their offense and puts them, it gives them the ability to be more contenders than they have been. They're 2-4. If they're going to do anything in regards to making a splash for making the playoffs, it's got to be now. And so Davante Adams, I think, helps that significantly from an offense perspective, and where they really seem to lack a lot of chemistry in the passing game. Still not bought in on Tyler Olbrich calling those plays, but nonetheless, I still think this is a win for the Jets and especially for Aaron Rodgers. So, second trade, Amari Cooper goes to the Bills. Josh Allen finally gets a wide receiver 1 back. Now, Amari Cooper was not actually playing great, all things considered. I do think that he was still I still think he is a very, very great option in the passing game. He is a route specialist. We've seen him win matchups one-on-one against man coverage extremely well, comparatively speaking to the rest of the league. And I think this is going to make an immediate impact for the Bills as well. Just having a guy like Amari Cooper out there who can win routes like he does week in, week out. He needs to work on his hands a little bit. We saw some nasty drops this year, which is, we've seen him struggle with that in the past, even with the Cowboys and the Raiders, when he was a younger guy in the league. But nonetheless, the Bills, they finally have a guy they can count on being an elite route runner. And so that is a big plus for Josh Allen. I think this, will help his MVP case as well. And it'll just kind of fine tune this offense. They add another weapon. So this, is only good for the Bills. For the Browns, really quick, I think that they're, continuing forward with Deshaun Watson. They're getting rid of Amari Cooper while they can for assets. They're really just almost what feels like they're tanking. So to me, in my opinion, that's what I see. I just don't see how you can watch these past few weeks of Deshaun Watson and think that you're going to win games down the road, because you're not. Deshaun Watson is playing awful. He looks like he doesn't even want to be out there. So I think the Browns are going to continue trying him out there, just one, due to because their owner made the dumb decision to sign him to a $230 million contract, and he wants to, be as hard-headed as he possibly can and just force the issue. Keep him out there on the field. We paid him this much money. He's going to start. So I think that's what the owner's doing. for right now. But also, I think the Browns, the front office is like, well, if we're doing this, let's do it and let's tank for picks. So I think that's what they're doing now. They're kind of just waving the white flag before we even hit the halfway point of this year. Kind of sad to see. They're wasting a really, really great coaching staff and some good talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll see what the Browns do, but it's nothing good in my opinion. Okay. Before we get into the big game breakdowns, the show is brought to you by Not Beer, American Sparkling Water. It is phenomenal. The perfect fall drink for football, especially when you wake up on a Saturday or Sunday morning. Perfect day to get your day started. If you want to find Not Beer, there are links in the comments where you can find the store locator, or you can order it on Amazon and have it shipped directly to your door. So never a bad time to have a Not Beer. Okay, Lions go to the Vikings. This game is the most highly touted game of the week, but it's also one of the most highly touted games of the year up until this point. Both of these teams, phenomenal. They are absolutely, unquestionably Super Bowl contenders in the league. Detroit Lions shredded the Cowboys last week, made a statement victory against them. And then the Vikings are one of the biggest surprises of 2024. We kind of, I speak for myself. I waved the white flag on the Vikings before the season even started. I mean, you look at everything that happened in the offseason, and with all of the injuries that they faced, I did not think they had a fighting chance. And now look at them. They're one of the best teams in the league. And so this is a fun game to discuss because of all of the ins and outs. Statistically speaking, we are Statletics. We're definitely going to talk about the stats, but Vikings are. It's just this team shocked me. Not only the offense, I don't even think that was the biggest shocker for me, but the defense. The level of which the defense is playing right now is absurd. They are, like top 5 in all sorts of metrics. We can go from it. They're third in the league in overall points allowed. They're first overall in defensive EPA. They're first overall in success rate allowed on the defensive side of the ball. It's phenomenal. It's truly amazing what Brian Flores has done. And I mean, you really think about it, the talent that they have, it's not groundbreaking. It's not like they have a bunch of star-studded defensive players out there right now, but kudos to them. This game will be fun. Sadly, the Lions lost Aiden Hutchinson, so that'll kind of be that's a big loss for that defense. I still think this defense is going to be solid nonetheless, but it certainly doesn't help that they lost, their best pass rusher. So that's one thing to watch for. Vikings are top 10 in an EPA margin on both sides of the ball. That speaks volumes to the type of team this is. There are very few teams who can say that their offense and defense is playing at an elite level. Lions are top 10 in EPA margin on the offensive side of the ball. However, they're not on the defensive side of the ball. They're approximately ranked 20 overall on the defense side of the ball. Darnold's actually playing better at the quarterback position right now than Jared Goff, statistically speaking. Not, if you look at the eye test, there's certainly some subjective takes here, but if we look at EPA per play accounted for by the quarterback, Sam Darnold's 8th, Jared Goff 17th. So the biggest matchup that we're going to be focusing on between the Lions and the Vikings. Detroit's running game, top tier. One of the best in the league, if not the best. Minnesota's defense, also top tier against the rush. They're giving up 67 yards per game on the ground. That is good for second best in the league. If you flip it over to Detroit's offense, they're averaging 158 yards per game on the ground. So to me, the first thing that sticks out is, can this Lions, who predominantly lean on their run game, and that enables them to open up their passing game, will the Vikings be able to stop that? It's strength on strength. And so which one's going to give? And truly, it's going to be amazing to see what kind of game that Ben Johnson plays, because historically for this year, we've seen the Vikings, the Lions, they utilize their rushing game to open up their passing game. But now I think that they have a chance to flip the script and come out aggressive in the passing game to help open up their running game. Because the thing about the Lions is they're so hard to stop because you have stars in the receiving game and you also have stars in the rushing game. You have the best 1-2 punch in the running backfield. And then you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and then emerging star Jameson Williams. So it's like, how do you even scheme for that? And the Vikings, they run a ton of cover zero. So if they can get pressure, that'll be great. But if this offensive line for the Lions, which is a top 5 graded offensive line via PFF, can hold their end of the bargain, then guys are certainly going to be open against this man-to-man defense. And so that's one of the things that I'm excited to see is this is strength on strength for the Detroit offense versus the Minnesota defense. Which one gives? And it's going to be really fun to watch. I honestly think this is going to be a higher scoring game. Even, the total is 50. This is good for it's the second highest total. I think the first slate on the first or the first highest total on the slate is Atlanta versus Seattle. But I think it's going to be a high scoring game as well. The model thinks it's going to be relatively high scoring, but it doesn't think it's going to be as high as what we think. The model is projecting 24-21 for the Vikings, which is kind of a big surprise. But the key matchup to me is Detroit offense versus Minnesota defense. I mean, I keep a heat map of this. All this blue, that's ranks of, top 5 ranks for these units. Let's talk about the Minnesota offense really quick. Jordan Addison back healthy. Justin Jefferson, he's a dog. They're coming out of a bye. I really expect them to come out firing as well. Kevin O'Connell has proven himself to be one of the best, play callers in the league. He's really developed Darnold into a legitimate threat at the quarterback position. And when you have guys like Addison and Jefferson, it's also really hard to stop. Now, Brian Branch is playing great defense for the Lions defense. That's going to be an interesting matchup. We'll see how much he aligns with Jefferson or if they kind of mix and match him with Jefferson and Addison. But he's playing really, really great as well. Minnesota offense 12th overall in EPA per play. Detroit defense 7th overall on the defensive side of the ball. However, Detroit is around 20th overall in terms of success rate allowed. So it'll be interesting to see, can the Vikings continue, can they control the clock and kind of leverage a Lions defense that will give up plays consistently? They really kind of rely on limiting the explosive plays, and that's really hard to do against a team like the Vikings where they generate so many explosive plays with Jefferson and Addison. I mean, those are 2 extremely explosive wide receivers, and it's just really hard to keep them underneath. And that's what the Lions are going to try and do. But that's why I think this game is going to be higher scoring, even more so than what kind of the markets are telling us. I mean, this game could go nuclear at any given moment. So really excited to see that. I like the model here. I think the Vikings win this game. It's a home game for them. Albeit I think there's going to be some recency bias with the Vikings, but this Vikings defense is so good. I think these 2 offenses are very comparable in ways, but this Vikings defense gets the nod in comparison to the Detroit defense. And I just like the more well-rounded team in this matchup. So give me the Vikings. I like them to stay hot coming off the bye. Okay, fix my sheets here. Going old-fashioned today. Super Bowl rematch. Chiefs go to San Francisco and play the 49ers. 49ers are 1.5 point home favorites. Point total sitting at 47.5. I got to be honest, I was kind of surprised at this point total. I mean, I know both of these teams, 49ers, they obviously had a really, really efficient offense, and Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. However, kind of a developing story is the almost, I don't want to say decline of Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is still very well and capable of making insane throws, explosive plays. It's just, that's not the type of offense that Andy Reid is calling anymore. So his stats are down. His big plays are down. So we don't see the Patrick Mahomes of old that we saw a few years ago, where we were seeing all of these deep balls and explosive plays made by the Chiefs offense. It's just not that same team. They play well underneath. They leverage their route runners, and Travis Kelce and now Juju Smith-Schuster was Rashee Rice. But they just, they work the underneath of the field, in that middle void. So it's a totally different offense than what we're expecting to see, but I expected this to actually be a little bit lower totaled. And just being fully transparent, the model here is totaled at 45 instead of 47.5. It has 49ers 23, Chiefs 22. So a little bit lower, not too far off. Similar, actually exact same point spread. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the matchup here. One of the biggest things that sticks out to me was one that we already talked about in the KC offense is just not as explosive as what we've seen, but the San Francisco defense is exploitable now, and that's something that we haven't been able to say in the past. And so, we look at the San Francisco defense, they're still good. I don't want to take away from that. They're 12th overall in EPA per play allowed on the defense side of the ball, but they're 17th overall in success rate allowed, whereas historically they were top 8, top 5 even in those two metrics. They're really giving up a lot in the passing game. They're 16th overall in the league in passing yards per game allowed, giving up about 230. Rushing, they defend the run game pretty well. I don't really anticipate the Chiefs going out there and running Kareem Hunt and Carson Steele into the ground against this the San Francisco front anyway, but exploitable nonetheless. So I think that's why it's actually a little higher totaled, is because both defenses are manageable against. If you flip it over to the Kansas City defense, they're 10th overall in EPA per play, 12th overall in success rate allowed, but 14th overall in passing yards per game, as well as passing yards per attempt. So good, but not elite. And so that's where I think the higher total is coming from. That's why I also think the point spread is so close. A lot of people are hammering the Chiefs, and rightfully so. I mean, there are oftentimes now where I've been on the wrong side of, picked against Patrick Mahomes, where I thought it was a shoo-in, and either one, the refs bailed him out, or two, the luck of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid strike again, and some crazy ass play happens. So I don't blame you, but I do think the 49ers win this game. I think that their offense I think Brock Purdy is actually playing extremely well, albeit they've had a few losses, surprising losses earlier in the season as well. One of them being to the Rams. I was kind of shocked at that one. But I think Brock Purdy is playing great football. I think he's actually carrying the team in a certain way that he's not getting a lot of credit for. You lost Christian McCaffrey. He didn't have Debo there for a little bit. George Kittle was banged up in and out of the game. Brandon Ayuk couldn't catch a football to save his life. He looks a little bit better now that he's, back into the swing of things. But credit due to Brock Purdy. He's playing good football, and I think he will continue to play good football against the Chiefs at home. Give me the San Francisco 49ers to win this game. And obviously when you have Patrick Mahomes at the quarterback position, anything is really possible. But they just don't feel like a team right now that can rip off explosive play after explosive play. And I think that the 49ers are going to be able to rip off a few of those. Guys are healthy now on the offensive side of the ball. They still don't have McCaffrey, but Ayuk, he's back in the swing of things. Kittle, he's back. Debo, he's back. So I really do think the 49ers take this game. They'll be heavily motivated as well. Okay, next one. Texans go to Green Bay, play the Packers. Packers coming off a really solid win against the Cardinals, and then Texas, they kind of waylaid the Patriots, although Drake made it look pretty good. Packers are 2.5 point home favorites in a matchup that's totaled at 47.5. Should be really, really fun matchup between two really good quarterbacks. I mean, two quarterbacks who are becoming some of the favorites around the league, the most easily watchable quarterbacks right now. I mean, CJ Stroud is only seemingly getting better week in and week out. Same with Jordan Love. He's finally into his groove after a slow start to this season. So both offenses should be firing on all cylinders, and both defenses are certainly better versions of themselves than what we saw earlier in the season as well. Texans had a highly touted defense. They had a slow start, but they're now in the full swing of things. They are, generating pressure at a really high level. They're top 5 in the league at doing that. Green Bay defense is also getting better. I know I mentioned that already, but they're progressing. They had a low, ceiling seemingly at the beginning of the year, but comparatively speaking to what, I personally thought and what kind of everybody graded them coming into the season, they're playing better, which is really, really good for Green Bay and their playoff hopes and their Super Bowl hopes as well. So Green Bay off Jordan Love. Dude spreads the ball around better than anybody I know. Matt LaFleur, phenomenal play caller. He just proves that week in and week out. It's just I want something that I want to reiterate over and over and over and over. They're top 10 in EPA per play, 20th overall in success rate. Surprisingly, they're second overall in rushing yards per game, right behind the Ravens. Fourth overall in passing yards per attempt. Jordan Love, he just stretches the field better than anybody. It's clearly not an offense where they do the horizontal raid, where they throw the ball left and right. They make an emphasis to stretch the field, get the ball downfield to one of their 4 dynamic wide receivers. So certainly exciting defense or offense to watch, but the defense for the Texans, pretty solid too. 13th overall in EPA per play allowed, only getting better too. That number is climbed every week. The defense is 4th overall in passing yards per game allowed, 5th overall in passing yards per attempt allowed. So it's going to be a duel. I think this game is actually going to be lower scoring than what people like to think. I think everybody sees CJ Stroud versus Jordan Love, and they're like, oh, game on. There will be points, scored constantly, and I don't think that will be the case. I think there will be some great offense played in this game, but in the NFL, in the league, you can see a matchup exude great offense without there being a plethora of points. And so I think that's what we'll see here. I think we'll see I think we'll see 2 great play callers going head to head, using 2 great quarterbacks. And there'll be really fun moments in this game where we just see some big talent flash, but we won't see a lot of points comparatively speaking to some of these other games. Houston offense obviously getting better. Now they do lack Nico Collins, but I don't think, considering they just fill right in with Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, I think they'll be totally fine in terms of the passing game. They absolutely have the weaponry. Joe Mixon's back healthy, so they can finally get the run game back going. So if we look at that too, that's kind of where they'll need some help at. The excuse me. The Green Bay defense, 21st overall in passing yards per attempt allowed, 8th overall in rushing yards per game allowed. And so with that being their strong suit, you kind of want to have a guy who can attack that, because they're certainly going to need the rushing game at this, at Lambeau Field, where one of the hardest places to play. They're going to need the rushing game to help open up the passing game to make those big plays. It'll be a dogfight, in my opinion. I mean, you'll have 2 teams going at it. Lambeau is one of the hardest places to play. You absolutely need the run game against a defense that is top 10 against defending the run, statistically speaking. So I think Joe Mixon can open up, leverage this offense a little bit, and allow some big plays to happen for CJ Stroud in this passing game. I think the Packers take this game. I think the Packers cover. That's not to say anything bad about the Texans, but I think the way that the Packers are playing right now, at home at Lambeau Field, I still think the Texans have some stuff that they need to figure out. They absolutely have the talent to win the Super Bowl, and that's not saying anything against them and what they're capable of season long, but I think they still are waiting for them to click to be the full, complete unit that we all know that they can be. So Ravens travel to the Bucks. Bucks are one of the underrated teams in the league, one of the surprises from this year. Ravens are coming off of an exciting win against the Commanders. Lamar Jackson continues to prove that he is absolutely worth MVP candidacy in the 2024 season. He's balling out. He is making plays with his arm. He's making plays with his legs. He's opening up the pocket. He's, a magician back there. So he's really driving this Ravens offense into elite territory. This game is one of the higher total games on the slate, 49.5 point total. Bucks are 3.5 point home underdogs, and rightfully so, in my opinion. I was a little bit shocked. I thought this was going to be 4.5, but it makes sense. The Bucks were still playing good football. One of the matchups that we're looking forward to that I think that makes sense of that line. One of those biggest surprises is I don't necessarily think the Ravens defense is bad, but statistically speaking, they're not good. They can absolutely clean that up. They have the talent to do so, but right now they just aren't able to defend the passing game like they have in the past. They're 26th overall in EPA per play allowed, where Tampa Bay's offense is 7th in the league on EPA per play. For the passing game, yards per game allowed, passing yards per game allowed, dead last in the league for the Baltimore defense. They're 27th overall in passing yards per attempt allowed as well. So Baker Mayfield certainly is going to tee off against that. If the offensive line, the Bucs offensive line, can hold off, I think that's why this game is driving to a higher point total matchup. Because if the Bucs can score, the Ravens are going to be able to score. That is undoubtedly, without question, whenever you have Lamar Jackson back there, points are available. And we can see that in the stats as well. Baltimore offense is 2nd overall in EPA per play. Tampa Bay defense, 16th overall in EPA per play allowed. 4th overall for success rate on Baltimore's offense. 25th overall for Tampa Bay defense. So you can absolutely consistently be successful against this this Bucs defense. If we look at what the model has to say, sorry guys, all over the place with the old-fashioned way here. Bucks 22, Ravens 26. So that's why I was a bit surprised. The model actually has Ravens -4 here. But the way that the Bucks are playing, the way that this team has rallied behind Baker Mayfield, it really wouldn't surprise me if the Bucks were capable of beating nearly every team in the NFL. Honestly, I think the Bucks are like one of those teams where they're frisky. They're absolutely worthy and able to contend with just about anybody in the league. And so I hope we see that. Although I do not like the Bucks as a Falcons fan, I do enjoy watching this team because they're one of those teams where you can tell that they're motivated to win, that they want to win for the guy to their left and their right. So absolutely a fun team to watch. Same with the Ravens, though. Watching Lamar and this offense go. Zay Flowers had a phenomenal game last week. We finally saw Mark Andrews get a touchdown. Fantasy owners rejoice. But the big matchup here is, will this Ravens defense be able to step up? The Bucks offense has established themselves as a top 10 unit, 7th overall in EPA per play allowed, EPA per play, like we mentioned, 9th overall in passing yards per game. They also are rushing the ball pretty well right now. Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker had a great game against the Saints. That game alone pushed them into top 10 team in rushing yards per game and rushing yards per attempt. So that is also going to be a factor in this game as well. So in my opinion, I do like the Ravens to continue forward here. I think they're the more complete team here. I think their offense is going to just score more often than what the Bucks offense is going to be able to. But don't be surprised if we see something crazy out of Baker Mayfield and the Bucks at home, nonetheless. But give me the Ravens. I think the Ravens are arguably one of the best teams in the league, and Lamar Jackson is playing at a level in which I just cannot pick against. Okay. Falcons playing at home against the Seahawks. The Seahawks had a 3-0 start to this season, but they then went on to lose 3 games subsequently after. So tough scenes for the Seattle Seahawks and their coach Mike McDonald, but I still certainly am a believer in their squad. I still think they obviously got the talent on the offensive side of the ball to be able to win big games. You know, you have one of the best pass catching cores in the league at the wide receiver positions. And then the Falcons, man, they're rolling now. You know, we've seen Kirk Cousins get comfortable, really starting with that Bucs Thursday night football game. After he threw for 500 yards, it's like game on. They did beat the Panthers 38-20 last week. Not a surprise, as the Panthers are hemorrhaging points. You know, they're the first team since the 2022 or 2020 Detroit Lions to give up an average of 4 touchdowns per game. So not good by any means. You know, a win is a win, but it's something that you're not really going to talk about when trying to make a transitive comparison to other teams in the league. You just kind of have to scrap it. Be like, hey, good win. They did what they're supposed to do and beat up on the worst defense in the league. You know, can't really take anything away from that. So, but nonetheless, the Falcons are hot. Kirk is comfortable. This team has young playmakers that are continuing to progress forward. Guys like Bijan, guys like Kyle Pitts, guys like Drake London. Drake London is balling out. Darnell Mooney is having a career year. So good things on both sides of the football, offensively speaking, for the Seahawks and the Falcons. And I expect we see some points in this game on Sunday as well. And the markets are implying that as well. This game is totaled at 51.5. It's the highest totaled game on the slate. Falcons are 3-point home favorites, rightfully so. We look at what the model has to say. 25-25. So my projections are actually right in line with the market in terms of the total, but not in line with the spread in itself and the implied team totals. So the market has Falcons -3. My model has Falcons at like -0.5, let's call it. So, 25.5. Seahawks 25.05. So Falcons -0.5 it, and I kind of, understand that, because in a game like this where there's going to be more variance on the offensive side of the ball, give it a closer game. I mean, you really expect it could be one of those instances of like whoever has the ball last is going to be the one that wins the game, on a last minute field goal or a last minute touchdown. That just makes a lot of sense for a game in which we expect a lot of points. So offensively speaking, ATL offense, 8th overall in EPA per play, 9th overall in offensive success rate. Seattle defense has been kind of piss poor, via the eye test. They're just kind of giving up a lot of explosive plays, but statistically speaking, they're not horrible. 19th overall in EPA per play. They're hemorrhaging in the passing game and the rushing game. I expect Bijan Robinson to tee off against this defense. They're 27th in the league in rushing yards per game allowed and rushing yards per attempt allowed, giving up 145 rushing yards per game and 4.82 yards per carry. That Seattle defense is. You flip it over. I mean, the ACL offense is not like world beaters in the rushing game right now. People are kind of raising their eyes at Bijan, but I mean, dude, they got Bijan, they got Tyler Algier. I have the utmost faith in these guys to generate some production in the rushing game. And now we have Kirk Cousins, who's also ready to tee off against this defense, who's 24th overall in passing yards per attempt allowed. Again, just green light, green light for this offense. I really am going to have to see more out of the Seattle defense and their ability to generate pressure. And try and get back there to Kirko and the Falcons. Now, Seattle offense, you can say the same for them as well. I mean, they have the highest pass rate over expectation in the league. They really are putting, and that's some of that is due to Kenneth Walker being out. He's been in the past 2 games, but those numbers are skewed because of the earlier weeks in which Kenneth Walker was out and they were throwing the ball to kind of make up for his lack of presence there in the backfield. So I expect we do see a fuller dose of Kenneth Walker. The Falcons are 25th in the league in rushing yards per game. So if you were going to exploit them there. They're actually a top 10 unit against the pass. They have a really good secondary led up by AJ Terrell, 6th overall in passing yards per game allowed, and 9th overall in passing yards per attempt allowed. Atlanta defense, that is. But we flip it over, man. The Seattle offense is, it's got a lot of potential, let's call it. I don't think they've capitalized and executed. Offensive coordinator Ryan Grubbs is still getting comfortable calling plays in the league. We've seen explosive plays out of guys like DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker, but it needs to be more consistent. It needs to be, in more timely fashion and not at the end of games per se. 21st overall in EPA per play, 12th overall in success rate on the offensive side of the ball for Seattle. First overall in passing yards per game, Geno Smith is, but they're 29th overall in rushing yards per game. They have to get Kenneth Walker going and exploit this ATL defense. So if I'm taking a pick on this game, I'm taking Kenneth Walker over on the rushing yards or rushing attempts or whatever you want to call it, because I think that the Seattle offense is going to see that mismatch and be like, we gotta get Kenneth Walker going. This is how we can beat this Atlanta defense, and this is the approach that we should take. And if they can do that, if they can utilize Kenneth Walker, find some success on the ground, leverage the play action there, and open up the passing game against this stout secondary, that's the key to success here. And that's why I think that's what the model is saying. I think they're liking this matchup because advanced metrics imply that the Seattle running game, when Kenneth Walker is in, can absolutely beat teams who cannot defend the rush. So I do like the Seahawks to keep it close here. But give me the Falcons. You know me. I'm a Falcons fan. I got to take the Falcons. Sorry, guys. But before we end the show, there are two teams that I wanted to say really quick. I always like doing this fun little segment, upset alert. Teams are on upset alert. I'm putting the Jets on upset alert, even though they just had that big trade for Devontae Adams. I think the Steelers are going to, a lot of people are talking about Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, and why would they bench Justin Fields after going 4-2. And I understand that there's a lot of legitimate arguments to be made in that conversation, but I understand Mike Tomlin's point of like, you got to try it out. If Russ can show anything of what he used to be in his Seattle days, he's absolutely the better quarterback. Now, if he's the quarterback we watched in Denver, they're fucked. There's no way to put around it. So we'll see. I understand why he's got to test it out. But I think the Steelers defense as a top 3 unit, I think they'll be able to take advantage of the Jets' unorganization right now. Their interim head coach Ulbrich is not a good play caller. We saw that when he called plays for the Titans. I think the defense is going to exploit that, and I think the offense is going to do just enough to win that game. Eagles, I'm also putting on upset alert. And now this is against the Giants. They travel to New York to play the Giants, and a lot of people are really down on Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is quietly playing decent football. I'm not going to say great. I'm not going to say it. He's made some errant throws, made some bad plays, but at the same time, you look at the stats, you look at the numbers, he's not playing bad, especially comparatively speaking to a lot of other quarterbacks in this league. I think he's doing just fine. So Giants +3 at home. I have them on upset alert to beat this Eagles team that is in almost shambles. They're very unorganized. You have Nick Sirianni, who is yelling at fans from the sidelines. You just have a lot of dysfunction going on this team. So give me the Giants to upset the Eagles at home this week, week 7. Guys, appreciate you watching, sticking with me, doing the solo pod. We will be back here next week. Both BJ and I, we will have the model picks and our stats ready to rock. So we will talk to you guys for week 8.